Life's mysteries unravel at the most unexpected moments. My story began with an encounter with a stranger, a man who revealed a terrible secret to me. My wife had cheated on me all her life, and I had not the slightest suspicion. Why had I never noticed her double life? What mask had she worn all these years? A mystery wrapped in lies was woven into every moment of our life together. In this video, I'll tell you about an amazing story of infidelity, where each plot twist reveals new facets of the drama. Are you ready to learn the truth that will shake your convictions? Get ready to dive into a world of amazing cheating stories where each answer creates new questions and each lie shatters our idea of love and fidelity. Welcome to a world where the truth is behind the veil and no one is left innocent. Make yourselves comfortable as we begin. This is a confession about me, about my life, about what it has become. I just want to speak out for once, but frankly, Chapter 1 is the backstory. It's always easy to start. Your memories are vivid, your emotions are light, you're open to new things and ready to turn this world upside down. There is no burden, hurt, hot disappointment, only hope for the best, always something new, and most importantly, the sparkle of your eyes in love. I was 21 at the time, just recovering from the hard experience of breaking up with my first true love. She was barely 18 years old. At that time, I began to take alcohol in the evenings out of boredom, went online, and wrote to everyone. A banal, "Hello, how are you?" Most ignored, some would reply. As she would say later, I do not know why I added. And I called everyone in a row for a walk. Someone agreed, and we walked, talked, told funny stories, ate, and looked at the stars. But nothing hooked me. But she kept me away for a long time, answering one-syllables or not answering at all. With time, we began to communicate more closely. Finally, she agreed to go for a walk. It was springtime outside, and it was the first time in a long, long time that something responded in my chest. This frozen piece of ice began to melt. Yes, she didn't have the body of a supermodel. No skirt above her knees, no flawless makeup and pouty lips. But suddenly the sky went from dusky gray to blue again. The color of her eyes, her smell drove me crazy. And the thin, trusting fingers in my palm gave me a feeling of happiness. Soon we began to meet. Our first sexual encounter I remember as if it were today. The first night that we slept together, without intimacy by the way, is fresh in my memory as if I woke up only the day before. I had had women before her, and she was no longer innocent. But I was much more experienced than she was, and in some ways I was her first. I exposed her to her own sexuality, taught her everything I knew myself. With me, she tried not only the classics, but everything else. She began to dress differently, more boldly and tastefully. From a gray mouse that no one noticed, she transformed into what I saw in her at first sight, a delightfully young woman. We were both city people, students. Summer came, and it was time to leave, and I left. She, on the other hand, stayed to work in the admissions office. Long nights came, passionate whispers of love, a warm, tight embrace, and a tender, long kiss goodbye. I left. I am absolutely sure of my girlfriend. I am happy. Thus begins a new chapter of this long, long, long story. Chapter 2. How many wonderful discoveries the wondrous new world has in store for us. The first month since my departure, everything has been wonderful. Sweet text messages from both sides, long evening conversations, counting down the days until we met. After about a month or so, about 35 days, I got a chance to get away for a couple of days. It was one of the best weekends of my life when I covered her eyes with my ankles and she, without a second thought, called my name. She said that I will never be confused with anyone else. I'll never forget her sincere, light breath and languidly closing her eyes when, left alone, my hands slipped under her light summer dress. We walked around all night, drinking wine, and couldn't tear ourselves away from each other. I went away elated, and then everything changed. After a while, texting became drier and more infrequent. My missed calls more frequent, and my voice, so familiar and warm, became increasingly cold and irritable. So minutes went by for another month. My birthday came around, and once again I arrived. She greeted me with a nice smile. We went to my place, but it wasn't the same. It was a different person, not the one I had known before. To all my inquiries, I got the answer that everything was fine, and a couple of days after I left, a call about how grateful she was for everything, that she didn't want to ruin my holiday and tell me earlier that the feelings were gone. Truthfully, when asked if she was seeing someone, she said no. We parted as friends. Autumn came, and I was back in town. Of course, the first thing I wanted to do was to talk to her. I didn't get a clear answer, but it was obvious that she was changing. All of her music had been replaced by black metal, and her style, and even her manner of speaking had changed. Gradually, step by step, I found out the chronology of events. After my departure, a guy with a guitar showed up at the committee, a guy of my age, and he invited her and her friend to meet him for a beer, just as a student. They agreed. Another time, he invited her over alone, and she said yes. They went for a walk in the park with her, and the pictures she was sending me were not those of her friends, as she told me. I didn't fight, but the resentment remained. I have always, above all else, valued honesty in people. Nevertheless, we continued to communicate, until one day we had a fight, a big fight. I put her in the bus, slammed the door behind her, and went out the door. I never saw her again, never called or wrote to her. 6 months passed. Chapter 3. The first wrong turn. It all started with a simple text message. I remember the message by heart, and I quote, "Happy birthday, sweetheart. I wish you the best, be happy." I just could not congratulate her. For me, it meant getting over myself, because we weren't strangers after all. So we started communicating again, but I saw a change in her. Gone was all that was in her in the fall. In front of me was the same girl from whom I had left in the spring. We communicated without seeing each other for 2 months. At the end of February, we agreed to go to the movies. We met at the mall, watched the movie, and, as I thought at the time, kissed. Then we drove back to my place. Appreciate the transformation. The gray mouse under a winter jacket was dressed in a light dress, underwear, and bangs. We woke up together. The road of 1,000 leagues and begins with a single step. And so began the journey, in the finale of which I, the author of this confession, find myself. Then it was like a dream. And it turned out that my feelings for her did not go anywhere, but only slumbered under a layer of ashes. Soon we began to live together. Everything was like before, only if you want, deeper or something. Conversations, revelations, sex, more sensual, and feelings were mature. Our infamous routine did not disrupt our relationship after a year, or 2, or 3. We were, against all odds, like a couple of teenagers in a candy-coated period. By this time I had started working. She was still in her senior year at university. In the 4th year of our life together we got married, but there was something that invisibly, like lead in water, poisoned our life, our dark episode of the past. I tried not to think, tried to forget, and if she had told me the whole truth from the beginning, I probably would have succeeded. But when in this life everything is simple, tell me, she flatly denied her connection with him. She said we were just friends. Yes, we went for a walk. Yes, we relaxed together. Yes, we had common interests. But that was the end. This is where we should probably start a new chapter. Chapter 4, The First Rift. And then, a few years later, I had to go on a very long business trip for 3.5 months. I took my laptop with me, her laptop. After a month and a half, I started looking for one scan of a document, but I couldn't find it, and I typed in a search of all the images on my hard drive. No, I didn't find their intimate videos, but sometimes I wish I had. I found a hidden folder, and in that folder was carefully saved all of their messenger correspondence. Back then, it was still an SQ. All the texts, all their shared and just his pictures. Even the call she put on him. With me, she always had one call to all the callers. Yes, it was all old, not a single photo or record, the period of our relationship and life together. But she kept this correspondence, she cherished it all. And what did I read? And how she was humiliating herself, begging him to go out together. How she was texting her friends that she was ready to cry that she wasn't with him for her birthday and New Year's Eve. This is the period when we just started communicating again. How hurt I was that he chose his girlfriend over her. At the time, I was in the far north and was working the night shift. That night, a snowstorm was blowing. There was no shower for hundreds of kilometers around, and in the center of the darkness and white silence I was sitting, staring into the monitor without looking away. My soul was empty, as if water had been splashed in my face, cold and dirty. I called her. She was sobbing, swearing her love, swearing she had forgotten to erase the photo she had left as a keepsake. All she confessed to was that she had really fallen in love with him then. Their intimate relationship, she flatly denied. Chapter 5, The Second Turn, The Wrong Way. I found no evidence that she had been unfaithful to me after our second meeting. All the correspondence and photos were old. Not wanting to destroy the family and love for her prompted me to forgive her upon my return. But man is a weak creature. I forgave her only in words. But that rift in my soul, that crack did not close and never closed again. As in the previously untreated, over time, inflammation occurs, and so here, the seeds sown have sprouted. Relationships became colder, trust was out of the question. Ironically, her friend, Wooden's friendship, how there was no talk that my wife was then intimate with him. By that time, my wife was expecting a child. Pregnancy was very difficult, and with constant hospitalizations, I supported her as much as I could. I was at the hospital all day long, trying to please her in any way I could. How I was not fired from my job for constant absence, it's just a miracle. We had a son, and I, who had never liked children before, became a father, and I dare to hope a good one. I cradled him at night along with her and then went to work, took them wherever they needed to go at short notice, and bought whatever they needed. It was hard, but I coped. I loved this child with all my soul. As for us, things were going downhill. No, we didn't scandalize or beat the dishes. I didn't cheat or bad mouth behind her back. On the surface, we made a great couple, but it was all a lie. The most important thing was gone from the relationship, trust, and without it everything else began to fall apart. Intimacy was a rare guest in our lives, and bouts of paranoia and despair were more frequent. Soon I began to catch myself thinking that I didn't want to go home. I could sit for hours in the car or stand in the driveway looking out at the city, telling myself I was at work. Nothing else made me happy, and the only thing that made me genuinely smile was my son's smile. Chapter 6, Silence. The last nail in the coffin lid was a month and a half of silence when my wife and child left for their parents this summer. Returning in the evening to my big, cozy 2-bedroom apartment, I was alone with myself. And it was hell. As it happens, by that point, I had known the betrayal of family, the perfidy and duplicity of friends, but what really knocked the ground out of my feet was the lack of trust in my family. Remember the expression, my home, my fortress. My fortress on top turned out to be a fairy tale house of cards, ready to fall apart with a gust of wind. In the evenings, when I was alone with myself, I remembered, and I wish I hadn't. I was reminded of things I hadn't seen before, didn't want to see. Here are a few examples. Once on my very first business trip, she put a come and get something status on social media upon my departure. Of course, then she said it was for me. I believed her. All the weekdays, when she went to university or to work, our sex was conservative enough to require long foreplay. But as soon as we were out of town, for at least 3 or 4 days, she became insatiable and no foreplay was required. She said she was tired. I believed her. Once I came home early, But the way our lock was designed, if you turn it at a certain angle, you can't open it with a key. It was like that this time too. But no matter how much I knocked, there was silence and the phone was off. I went outside, worried, trying to look in the windows. And then she called back and said she hadn't heard and the phone had hung up. And I believed her. Comparing all of the above to the above, I'm about 90% sure that I believed and wanted to believe that there is loyalty and devotion in this world, pardon the tautology. I overlooked the obvious and stubbornly ignored the facts. We've been together for almost 13 years now, and I feel like I've wasted those years in vain. Everything I listed was before the baby was born. Not a single reason to be suspicious afterwards, but does it really matter? And then, perhaps, I'll move on to the epilogue. Epilogue. I want to say thank you to those who found the strength to listen to the end. Is this like a confession to me? Judge me. I'm not asking for leniency. All our troubles are mostly our own fault, and I'm a better confirmation of that. Increasingly, I catch myself thinking thoughts that I shouldn't have, but I won't because my aging parents and child need me. I still find the strength to genuinely rejoice for the happiness of loved ones, to genuinely wish for the happiness of friends and family. I have a nice apartment, a job, and a car, but I feel used and convenient every second, taken advantage of when things didn't work out, cheated and taken advantage of. It's monstrous to doubt and not trust the people closest to you. Somewhere deep down, I still love her, but that doesn't mean much anymore. That crack that formed years ago has grown into a monstrous hole in the pile. I hate myself. So ends this life story in which a smiling 21-year-old walked in and came out a sullen, self-loathing, life-beaten man of 33, already halfway done and hoping for nothing. Friends, please support this story with a teaser for its exclusivity and honesty of the author. Of course, I do not rule out that he embellished somewhere, something he did not say, but for some reason there is a firm conviction inside that the story is real. I've seen it. I think you have too. Of course, at first, it seemed like something out of the realm of childish babble. I even took notes as I read the story in order to form a conclusion and share it with you. So the first thing I wrote it was sincere laughter and a smile from what the author said, saying that at 21 years old he taught her something new and he was more experienced. Who taught an 18-year-old girl, God, but then I remembered that mother, because I think each of us, hear men right if it is so, well, let's be bloody, because every one of us at some point in our lives thought this, thought he was cool, thought he was already such a man. Here is this woman, his and he here means her in the world. But many have had it, 100%, and in my practice, it has happened a bunch of times. I mean with clients. But then this childish babbling started to develop into something heavier. It was like I was transported myself, and especially when I wrote the story. I was talking as if the author was me. I'm getting ahead of myself to say no, it's not. The author is another person. But how I got into this story, really heavy, very heavy, and I feel sorry for the author. Especially the way he talks about the meaning of life. I can feel it. I feel his pain and I feel his hopelessness. Let's support him in the comments, and even better give him advice. Advice on what should be done in this situation. Yes, to leave is the most reasonable and logical first thing that comes to mind. A sane person, yes. But maybe not also simple. I want to discuss it with you in the comments. I hope we will have a very lively discussion. Goodbye and see you in the next video. See you soon.